Kia ora, everyone. Welcome to this month's Techbytes. It is June 2026. Tech Week has wrapped up. The government had their budget last week. We've hit pause on the under 16 media ban. Coming back to the budget, there was nothing in it for us last year. You know, they like the idea of roads. We'll come back to that later. The tech sector is left wondering, you know, where the investment is for the stuff that we want to get involved in. And so I'm a bit worried, and you may have read my LinkedIn post last week that, you know, there wasn't anything in there. This month, we're doing another one of those chats where we're going to catch up on the topics that have been top of mind over the last couple of weeks. And I'm really pleased to have back again Mr. Andrew Cushen. Sorry, mate, you missed out on the knighthood in the King's Birthday Awards. Come back to
There's always next time.
There's always next time. There's a new year. And our good friend, we've decided we needed a bit of balance rather than just us two chatting. We've got Vivian, Chandra, and we'll come back to Viv in a minute. But Andrew, why don't you introduce yourself again, about who you are and what you do, and why you should be listened to.
Hard one to answer that last particular point. Look, I've been in and around telco and tech now for about 20 years in a variety of different roles. I have a lot of opinions about a number of things, which I'm quite happy to share, some of which I like to think are right. You can judge by the time you hear me again answer these questions with Craig.
I should just say Andrew's a board member of Well of Two, and so, you know, that he does have some influence over some of the things that we do. And I've written down, I think we can call you an internet policy veteran. I mean, there's a bit of grey coming through. And then just to bring some youthful balance to the team, we've asked Viv along. So Viv, do you want to talk about you and why we should listen to you? No, don't answer that question. Just who are you?
Kia ora, everyone. I'm Viv, and I've also been kicking around the internet for a little bit. And I guess I think I always call myself a tech adjacent consultant. So I like to work in and around tech, but I'm not really, I haven't been a coder since my early 20s. And then even then I wasn't very good at it. So definitely tech adjacent. I'm really interested in issues of equity and currently a lot of internet safety stuff with some of my most recent roles.
Why don't we kick off with that? You know, start with internet safety, because it is a big issue that we're all dealing with. You know, the growth of AI, the pervasiveness of those tools that are in our lives, and social media. And there's a lot of chatter around the great under 16 social media debate. And look, we're looking to do something in the second half of the year around just what does that look like. You know, but we've had, you know, the ban come in Australia. We've had the age verification come in the UK. We are seeing things happen in the States. And our own government was looking at a strict under 16 social media ban. It went through a parliamentary select committee and came out the other side. And now they've officially paused the bill.
Yeah. I think we were one of the orgs that spoke on it, and we need to stop regulating children as if they're the problem. So this issue hits the news in various ways here and there, and it always slides towards how do we control young people, their screen time, you know, bans aimed at kids, lectures on what kids should and shouldn't do online. Kids aren't asking to disappear from the internet. They're asking for platforms that don't exploit them. And all of the social harm orgs are saying the same thing. If you have safe platforms, everyone will be safe. Like, adults don't want to be exploited online. And what magic happens when you hit 16 that suddenly you're now able to deal with all that? Like, it's ridiculous.
I remember you sending me a note when the pause hit, because it really is because ACT and the Greens are both shared this concern. Why do you think they've aligned up on this one, Viv?
Completely different reasons, but also similar. ACT, you know, they're libertarians, so they're all about everyone gets to do whatever they want for themselves, and that kind of aligns with sort of the Greens and this overreacher policy. So globally, we've seen this ban being used, and I use ban with like quotation marks for those that watching us, it's being used to just gather more data. Like, how do you prove you're over 16? By giving away more of your data to prove that, by uploading your government ID or whatever it might be. And time again, that's being used as a vast human rights overreach.
Well, let's talk about, and Andrew, you might want to come in here just a little bit about, Australia went ahead, the UK went ahead, but is an age ban actually enforceable? I mean, or does it just turn every Kiwi kid into a VPN master wizard?
See, I want to get my caveat out before I talk about this, because I have a role in a different sense of this debate, and this is Andrew Cushen, private citizen, talking. But that's exactly what concerns me about this, right? I am actually really sympathetic to this particular cause and matter, noting what Viv has said, though, too, that concerns about safety and harm and all of that other jazz don't pop into existence for under 16s and pop out of existence for over 16s, right? But the idea of this age-based barrier, when there is no actual infrastructure underlying the internet in the core way that that technology is designed to mediate and judge age, is just inviting trouble. And I think that there are really real considerations with us being a follower here in New Zealand of seeing how this tech has been implemented in Australia and in the UK, and being able to stand back and say, are we into that? Do we really all want to be verifying ourselves before we do our stuff online? I don't know about that, let alone just how effective those solutions are.
Yeah, what's your thought, Viv? Because, I mean, banning just pushes them onto something else, or?
Yeah, definitely. So that's one of the biggest, there's been a couple of big side effects that have now been seen from overseas, because I think we're almost a year in for Australia. And one of them is there was a very recent report that came out. They said about 70% of the people that aren't meant to be on there are still on there or something. Don't quote me on the exact stats, but it is that high. And then the other one was being pushed onto slightly unsafer platforms, or even way more unsafer platforms. And we, as so one of the hats that I wear currently is with ECPAT Child Alert. We do vast amounts of training in safeguarding children for frontline workers mostly. And just this morning I was at a school talking to young people themselves, and it's this whole thing with so they meet you on a variety of different platforms, most of which weren't even included in the first draft of this bill. So, we're talking about things like MMORPGs, massively multiplayer online role-playing games. So things like Roblox. People are meeting people on that. That's not one of the things. Yeah. But then even if they're meeting them on Facebook and Instagram, also no young person is on Facebook. I don't know why that was included. Facebook, and then immediately they're getting them off onto something else, onto Telegram, onto Signal, onto whatever it might be. And you're not going to be able to block all that. Yeah.
Which sets up part of the regulatory peril around this, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And what's that regulatory peril? Because you will have, right, and not trying to blend my hats here, you will have a group of responsible platforms that will try to a degree to make this work.
Yeah.
That almost serves as a disincentive to do these particular things, to the degree to which it drives people away from their platforms.
Yeah.
And that's a regulatory peril here, that the people who actually invest in trying to make these rules work effectively have their commercial interests harmed. It's a hard sell.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, also all the stuff we said before, like how do you do the age verification? There's been when I was reading into some of the stuff again, I think I found a blog of mine from 2013 or something that was talking about how Microsoft did their this is 2013, right? Like the age verification thing where they showed people their, and then they guessed people's age from a photo, and it's 2026 now, but the technology really hasn't gotten that much better. And that's what we've heard time and time again globally, is that all of these, upload a photo, not to mention you're now uploading photos that you might not want to, but those, it's not proving your age. It's not it's not a hard and fast rule. And and your alternative is the government ID, which then now you're linking what could be, an online persona to your real life identity. Yeah.
Well, there was an anecdotal story that came out of the UK report on their age verification, talking about stories of, and this was them reporting on their own stuff. Kids, boys in particular, drawing moustaches on their faces and getting through the age verification checks on some places. So, yeah, you'd think in 2026 we'd be way better than that. Yeah.
I do want to share one more thought on this, right? On the flip side of all of these things, there is actually a really cool opportunity here to use some local tech, some local digital identity-based solutions that respect the user voice here and how we authenticate in a civil infrastructure sort of way to validate how old New Zealanders are online, right?
Yeah.
And despite everything that we've said and all of those concerns and everything else, and a Cushen private citizen sympathetic to this problem, how can we use this as an opportunity to catalyse some cool use of tech here in New Zealand? I'd love to see that happen.
Yeah.
Viv, you just come back to your ECPAT work a little bit, because we're talking about exploitation online, etc. I mean, the select committee also wanted to put a ban on, the old Notify apps, but how you define them is really difficult. So you could actually, completely ban Grok, which may not be a bad idea actually.
Yeah.
Obviously,
we need to,
what
as
do
a
you do
country,
about creepy AI stuff?
Yeah, well, as a country, we need to update our position on digital rights over likeness and imagery. It started globally with, the SAG-AFTRA, the big union of actors, really jumping on there, because again, that's protecting their commercial interests, and strengthening your privacy and online safety settings so that they're enforceable and not voluntary. But as most safety organizations or sexual harm organizations, we want safety by design. So features like image generation, there's been so many studies done globally to show that they only work, for example, the Notify versions. We're not talking the ones that fake, Obama and Luxon, but the ones that do the nuding, that's not a word. They only work for women's faces. So there's a reason for that, right? And when we talk about banning apps, we forget that they're being used by humans that want to do this. And so, where is the victim support? Where is the public education that supports all that? Because right now there is a bill going through Parliament, and it's talking about banning deep fakes, and the way that it's written, it's literally just changing two laws. I think it's the Harmful Digital Communications Law and the Crimes Act, and they're just adding the word synthesized to created or shared or whatever, and that's fine. But again, it's like little tiny band-aids that is not going to really fix the whole thing. I don't know if that actually answered your question.
No, that's good. And I want to move on from this specific topic to just generally more around AI and the implementation and the way we're using it in Aotearoa. There's been a lot of hype, and we're starting to see, particularly, some of the stuff we've been working through with our digital leaders around trying to turn that hype into reality. But one of the things that came out last week, which is pretty useful, is the One NZ AI Trust Report, which showed that last year, based on their survey, 76% of Kiwis used AI, but trust is actually declining. Only 29% are what you might call AI actives, people who are actually using it. Now, I'm a big user, so I'm in the 29%. But I'm I was going to say educated, but that's not be the right word, but experienced, wiser, older gentleman, been around the block a few times and understand how this works. But I just think, are we getting bored of the hype, or just getting annoyed at all the errors that keep cropping through?
I don't know. Like, that particular stat that one produced is actually mirrored in most countries, as far as I understand. That for the first time, at least on some of the reading that I have done, you have a new generation of technical tools that are being met with quick suspicion for the first time, rather than more of an open-minded view from the general populace about what it can do. And I think it's really telling, actually, that it's around this AI space, and it's around that uncanny valley that's usually used in a robotic sense, right? About what it means to have things mimicking being human and mimicking a form of engagement that is actually deeply unsettling to a lot of people, particularly when you consider that most of the use cases for the general public are in chatbot style situations where it's not necessarily disclosed who and what and well, the nature and the existence of the being that you are talking to. I really do think it's not actually a tangible thing. As per your question, Craig, I actually think that there's something far more visceral going on here about people rejecting this artificial basis of intelligence at this particular stage.
So I'd like to politely counter that. There's been so many things now where Gen Z in particular, so younger people, we're talking 20 and under, are being told, for example, that a specific influencer on Instagram or whatever is AI generated, and they don't care. So many studies now that show, oh yeah, no, I know that. It says AI right on the thing, but I'm interested in their purchasing their thing. They're pretty anyway. They're handsome anyway, whatever it might be. And so I'm like, obviously it's One New Zealand. Who are they even surveying, that kind of thing? I would say that there's a generation coming through that don't care whether it's real or not. They want to know what the substance of the messaging is. And the other thing is, many people have talked about how all of this bias that already existed in the world is being baked in. And just this morning I saw, and I haven't got the link, which I will find before we go live on this, but there was someone that did 2 identical AI generated CVs, and they just put obviously a man's name on one and obviously a woman's name on the other, and then they sent it out and to get people, recruiters, real life recruiters, like opinions on it. And the men's one, it was like, oh, he's a go-getter, he's like, and it was obviously AI like as obvious as it can be to be AI generated. And the woman's one had a much lower trust rating. They were like, oh, obviously can't even be trusted to create her own CV, those kinds of comments. And so these kinds of biases are being baked into the stuff that's now coming out the other end. And then what's scary is you see all these like stories of how much of that is being rebaked into like fake academic articles that have been cited are now being pushed back into what becomes real and what becomes something that it's getting referred to, which is why it's not a surprise to me that fewer and fewer people are now going, oh, I don't know if I trust it as much as I may have done a couple of years ago. And then the final very little point on this is now they've shown that a lot of the major AI platforms, especially the free ones, are baking in advertising without you realizing. So, a really common use case, I'm going to Turkey in a couple of months. I'm going from this state to this state and I have this much budget. Give me an itinerary. So that's a perfect use of AI because it's going to go out. It's going to find all those links. But now it's coming back going, oh, actually, this thing is great. It's better than this thing. And the reason is that first thing is being sponsored and you don't know that. And so, that is a huge erosion of trust when it comes to consumer use of any new technology.
Yeah, and it's figuring out, as a user, how would you know that? I mean, nearly 2/3 of people they talk to said they'd stop using an organization if they believe they're misusing AI. But how do you know they're misusing AI? In your example, how do you know they're the sponsors? I mean, 70% said they had a bad AI experience in the last year. So, there is this mixture of different perspectives and things that are coming through. And it's almost like, from my perspective, if you're aware of what you're watching and what you're looking at, then, as you said, Vivian, it's the substance you're looking at. But if you're not aware, then it's a different ball game altogether. And maybe we'll start seeing, rather than just using AI to generate poems and things, we'll see it much more being used in actual, real live things like inspecting power lines, agri-tech, those sorts of spaces and places. Like, the government's going to invest in, I'm not going to talk about the MSD example, I'm going to talk about the health example where, they're going to invest in the use of AI for mammograms. So they'll be able to push through. There'll still be a human in the, so the way mammograms work is you've got to have two people view it. So they're going to replace one with AI, but keep the human in the loop, and they'll be able to push through twice as many. So that's, that's a positive use case, right?
Oh yeah, and that's the same as the mole use case. So there was like a mole mapping type software that's been around for like 10 years, and over the course of that time, it had gathered, I don't know how many millions and millions of photos of just people's moles. And race issues aside, of which there were some, it was way more accurate in getting in diagnosing a skin cancer mole in admittedly a Caucasian colored skin than a regular GP that had been doing that kind of stuff for like years and years and years, because it was just the vast amounts of data that was going in and that it could compare. So, that's definitely the kind of use that we can look at. It's just when I guess, again, do we trust it? Is it then from there going to an actual medical professional, or is it going straight to a robot that's going to cut this mole out of you?
Look, I might be about to age myself in terms of somebody who has finally reached their point of aging out of time, right? A la your example about Gen Z before. But this is at least the third technical revolution that I think I've seen in my time in this space, right? Cast back, 6 or 7 years, and everybody was buzzy about applying the cloud, right, which is just a computer over there, right? Prior to that, it was how you're going to utilize social media, right? About the 2010s was the big wave that everybody had to jump on. Cast forward a little bit out of that, it was how you're going to adapt to the mobile web, right? Each of these things have transformed the way that we interact with a whole pile of organizations in our lives, right? And transformed the way that those organizations service us and employ people and get things done, right? Those have all been good things, but they've been incremental changes that have adapted over time, as opposed to, I think, the way that AI has transformed that this is the revolutionary one that's going to change everything and fire everybody in the next 2 years. I think that aspect of the hype cycle, compared with the other, frankly, hype cycles that this has been through before, doesn't help trust either, right? There's going to be another really cool incremental application of technology. It's not going to see robots sitting there firing us all so that we all need a UBI and all of those other crazy articles. Call me cynical, but that's just the way I see this.
Thanks, guys. Look, this is the point at most podcasts where I would come in with an advertising point, say so-and-so's advertising, but this is a free podcast brought to you by the good folks, the Technology Users Association at 2 Hands. If you listen to this and you're not a member, go to our website and sign up. That's the advert for this month. Okay. All right, let's just move on. I mean, last week was the budget. There were no goodies handed out, unless you consider the billions of dollars going into transport projects like roads and expressways, and the Cambridge to Pierretti Expressway, which is now going to be built. And as someone who uses that quite a lot, I can see value to me in that. But in contrast, the digital tech sector, it still feels ignored. It's like they want technology to be a pillar of growth of productivity, etc., and yet it just doesn't seem to have any substance behind it. So why are governments, but why is ours so eager to spend billions on things like roads when ignoring the digital stuff like the infrastructure and the equity and the connectivity? Who wants to go first on that one?
I mean, I do, actually, because totally agree, right? There are some things that I really, really, really hoped vainly that I was going to see out of this budget. In particular, I wanted and hoped and dreamed that we'd actually see a more robust solution to digital connectivity rather than the collective shrug from our public service and saying that we'll just leave it to offshore satellite internet providers, because I just don't think that's good enough. But look, Craig, Viv, I think that we've lost an opportunity here, and I feel like the Western world has lost an opportunity here in general. We saw the benefit of digital infrastructure during the COVID time and how, it changed the way that our economy and society works due to that necessity, but it also showed the benefits of widespread high connectivity and all of the other skills that people need in order to be able to use it, right? And how that can translate to lesser requirements on physical infrastructure by digitizing what you can digitize. I just feel like the last 5 years that has all drifted into some sort of hazy, ignored memory so that we can go back to some sort of business as usual. That frustrates me, disappoints me. We saw this can work during COVID, and why we didn't double down on that bewilders me a bit.
I mean, during COVID, I was working more embedded into the education sector, and you saw exactly the same thing happen there. I guess on a slightly smaller scale, there were all of these wins, as horrible as that is to say, during a global pandemic, but there were, people learned how to connect online. People learned how to forget about the idea that you had to be, it was bums and seats. And then all of a sudden, fast forward just a few years, and you're just going to throw all of that out the window. Literally the year after it was supposedly all over. So 2022, we were told by quite a large ministry that had previously paid for this research to shelve the research that we had done that they paid for because they didn't want to have hear talk of hybrid or remote learning anymore because it was now 2022 and it was all about getting bums back onto
school.
Yeah. And it's so disheartening when you were there working on that and getting people ready, but also with my equity hat on, we were there helping those that weren't there get there during COVID. And that's especially with, there were some schools that I think they were talking about, when we were jumping into that first lockdown, they're like, we do this all the time. We have little Jenny who goes off to the Youth Olympics or whatever. And, and that was normal, right? And this little Jenny would always be swanning here and there, jumping into ski season or whatever it was. And so they always had to have a lot of their stuff online, but there was a huge section of schools that weren't there. And then we got them there. And then, a few years later, they were asked to just kind of throw that all out. And we have seen it across a lot of the industry as well, and I'm sure Craig, a lot of your members will know, now it's about back to your old productivity measures of how many people are in the office at a certain time.
Look, there was some money in the budget for things like the Players and Fund got cut, but there was some money moved elsewhere. There was some money for some digital foundations, FEMA got some money, RMA got some money. There was also, I don't know if you noticed it, but there was a move to make the gold card or a true digital identity card. Let's just talk about digital identity for a moment, because the government, the previous Minister for Science, Innovation and Technology, the previous government for digitising government, the Honourable Judith Collins, was very big on having a government digital identity. And they are developing one. I mean, let's ask two questions. Is this a good thing? And then secondly, are people in this current environment actually going to take it up?
I mean, this goes straight hand in hand with the previous question, right? How much do we trust anything online? And now we're talking about linking our real life identities. I mean, the Real Me has actually been a bit of it's quite a global success, the way that they've actually gotten that going. So I'm guessing most of the government departments that are looking to do this are just hoping to build on that. But yeah, we're now talking about, I'm just really cynical. I see it creeping in because the social media ban's been talked about. I see it creeping in because we're talking about, X, Y, and Z and enforcing this and that and the other. And so then it's well, maybe we'll experiment on the gold card members first and then go from there. I don't know.
If they can make it work for the gold card, they can make it work for anyone. I mean, yeah. I think you're right, but there's also, if you go back to prior to this government coming in, there's quite a lot of discussion around what was being done in New South Wales, a lot of discussion around, is it Estonia? I can't remember that, that was the flavour of the month at that point as well. And also last week was passed the act that allows for digital driver's licenses as being the first step. So, there is some momentum building, isn't there, Andrew?
So totally, right? I think your first question wasn't quite worded right.
Okay.
Because I think we have to do that, because there is a public expectation that we will have the benefit of some of this convenience from a lot of people in the public. I'm certainly one of them. And the availability of those platforms to do it. For me, the really big question is whether or not we're going to be just a taker of those standards developed primarily from a platform basis and primarily on an advertising logic basis, or whether or not we're going to be a builder. And Viv, your example of what we did with RealMe was a great example of how we built national infrastructure for managing identity as it was in that era, about 15, 20 years ago. It did really work. But it hasn't really evolved to the way that the dimensions of identity have changed now. And I think that solution looks different here. I think my enthusiasm, because I do have it, for digital identity is probably quite different if this is Andrew Cushen brought to you by monolithic global platform versus Andrew Cushen brought to you by a trusted locally developed government partnered solution, or even better, platform identity solution that I'm in control of and can mediate who and what I share with other people based on my credentials going where I need them to go, rather than being stuck into a global advertising platform. Rant, Fred. I'd love to see that last one. It can be done if our government is ballsy enough to chart out.
I mean, RealMe didn't have zero problems, right? Like, especially during COVID, when they would like really quickly linking them to all kinds of immediately mandatory COVID required things, and it just all fell apart. But yeah, I feel like it does have, I think they even then said that at least 90-something% of people were okay with it, and so, which is huge, right? And they just like, I think, it just feels like every time a new government comes in, they have to reinvent everything. And this is one of the big public things that I've talked about, is a longer election cycle, I think, would help. At the moment, it feels like we're constantly in election year, because it's kind of like you're campaigning, you're trying to do the thing, and then you're recampaigning again. Like, I don't know. I know France has going back and forth with. It went down to 4 and went up to 10, and it's
yeah. Well, let's move on from the serious stuff onto some sort of lighter side of the of tech and the internet that has been happening over the last month, including this internet apocalypse. There are doom scrollers on TikTok panicking over NASA's latest warnings about the solar maximum, which means it could wipe out global internet infrastructure for weeks. So my question to you guys is, if the internet actually went down for a month, what's your survival planning? Do you reckon you could use a paper map? Vivian, you're the youngest one, so you start.
I'm always ready for an apocalypse. I love all zombie movies, because it's not going to be a solar storm; it will be zombies. And I'm fairly high-ish up in martial arts, so I think I'd be on the front line stopping the zombies. I know that's not your question. I don't need to read a map. I just need to hunker down and hit people that come near me.
I hope I get to hunker down behind Viv then.
Yeah.
I'd be stuffed.
I can't cook or farm, so I'm going to need people. Yeah.
I like to think I've got a whole pile of unread physical books. It's the core of your question, Craig. I think I would massively in this solar flare-enabled internet apocalypse. That would take us out. Massively struggle. I think we'd all massively struggle. On a fundamental basis of a modern economy like ours, fundamentally struggle. I think we underestimate just how much in that scenario, what I still like to think is unlikely, TikTokers, just how much things would fall apart really fundamentally and quite quickly.
Yeah.
That
is the scary thing that, like, I think COVID proved, was like, even when it wasn't zombies or anything as severe as that, is how much people were really not very nice. And I liked in the before COVID that I like to imagine that all those zombie movies weren't real, that if anything like that happened, people would band together and be nice to each other and work together, and you saw instantly how that was untrue. And so if you're talking about wiping out internet for even the shortest amount of time, people immediately realize they can't access whatever they need to access. There's so many things that would just immediately descend into chaos, I think. Yeah.
I wonder whether it's more like you cope without internet, but if the supermarket ran out of bread and toilet rolls, you'd really be screwed. I think, moving on again, last week was Google I/O, might have been the week before. They were back with new glasses. Now, Viv and I are both wearing glasses. They're all now back to pushing smart glasses and wearable AI pins. I'm not sure I'm ready to walk down Queen Street talking to my glasses. I mean, are we just going to look goofy?
Yes, and also I've already gone out with a blog when I'm not the only one. They're called pervert glasses for a reason. Going back to internet security, high-tech wearables, it's easy non-consensual capture of everyone. And again, it's women and children that are constantly being targeted. There is apparently, I haven't seen them myself personally, giant range of content on the internet, on YouTube, called nighttime or nightlife videos, and they're just non-consensual recordings of women out on the town. And they're now being facilitated easier with the Meta glasses and stuff, and because they look stylish. So then people don't realize they're being recorded. The little light is apparently so easy. You can use a tiny piece of duct tape to cover it up. So it just feels like it's just another piece of software that's been created by hardware that's been created by someone that has zero appreciation of different ways to move in this world.
So don't you think there are benefits, like if I look at a painting on a wall and I go to my AI assistant, look at that painting, tell me who painted it, when they painted it, etc.
Yeah.
But there are some positive sides, aren't there?
Never thought that I'd walk around with wearables like I'm wearing right now in my ears all the time. I realize it's a different use case than having them strapped to my face and eyes. But we are using them. I do wear these all the time. They augment my hearing, which I've managed to damage in a variety of fun ways over the last 20 years, right? They can help me automatically translate things if ever I go overseas again, right? I mean, absolutely respect what you're saying here, Viv, that there is a creep side of some of this visual tech in particular that is deeply weird and doesn't fit reasonable norms of how we're meant to behave here. But I really do think that I'm really interested to see where wearables go, actually. And I think the challenge is working out how social norms are still reflected in that, and actually how you still mediate and control, frankly, and penalize unacceptable behavior.
Yeah. And actually, I've always, from the first Google Glass, what was it, 5 years ago, I always saw one of the, unfortunately, the creepy side effects was the one that I wanted, was this, that ability that some people have where they look at someone and they know, who they are. I do not have that.
Neither do I.
You both have seen me at conferences going, smiling and nodding, and I have no idea who that person is, but they very well know who I am. And, that, if my glasses was just, just quietly in my ear being like, this is great, he's the CEO of Duans, I'd be like, how's it going? And I would be able to, it would be huge for all kinds of those kinds of uses. But yeah, again, but then even in that particular case, if I was talking to Craig, he did not consent to me scrolling the internet looking for who he was, just so that I could be asking him, how's your kids? How's the, and naming them and making him feel that I actually remember who he is, which obviously is something that people can naturally do, but can be enhanced.
All right. Well, it's been great having this conversation. I want to rapid fire finale, sort of summarize everything up. Andrew, you're going to go first. 5 questions. The same 5 to each one of you. Quick answer, no explaining. The under 16 social media ban, genius protection or a parent's pipe dream?
Parent's pipe dream.
AI customer service, great for business or a one-way ticket to losing 2/3 of your customers?
One-way ticket.
The 2026 budget, more expressways or better digital infrastructure?
I like the expressways, but I wish it was both.
Okay, now who would last longer without Wi-Fi, you or Vivian? And the smart glasses, the future of computing, are a great way to trip over a wheelie bin.
It's future. I'd like to see how it pans out.
All right, Viv, your turn. The under six, I pretty much know. I mean,
Yeah.
we know what your answer is going to be, but it's a bit of fun. Under 16
Parents,
social
my
media.
dream and nightmare.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. AI customer service, great for business.
Yeah, losing your customers.
Last
eroding
week's budget.
I'm going to admit here I didn't read the budget, so neither.
And who's going to last longer, you or Andrew, without Wi-Fi?
See, I reckon Andrew. He seems to know more about life in general.
He lives on a farm too, so
Exactly.
and the smart glasses, future computing, or a great way to trip over a wheelie bin.
I mean, you shouldn't trip over the wheelie bin because you should be able to see it through the glasses. I reckon actually the future. I think we need to not be afraid of new technologies, but we do need to put regulations around it. I know you said I wasn't meant to say anything more, but
Oh, that's all right. Hey, look, it's been it's always fun talking to you two, and you know, we're just getting to, all we're doing is riffing on a couple of topics amongst friends and recording it and sharing with other people. So, you know, what else could be better? And so, Andrew, thank you so much for being here. Is there anything you want to say to finish up?
No, actually, this has been fun. Thanks for having me.
And Vivian, great to have you in today and to bring that side of, you know, thinking and the stuff that you're involved in. Anything you want to plug?
no,
quickly?
I mean, lots of things, but that's fine.
You've got a website, eh? Do you want to plug your website?
So for ECPAT Child Alert, it's ecpat.org.nz. You can probably put it in the show notes or something. And we always have online trainings and things, and they're always relatively cheap because we try and get funding for them. So if you do work with kids at all in any capacity, teacher, probably parent, please look us up. Yeah.
Awesome. Hey, well, look, everybody, thank you so much for listening in. This was recorded on the afternoon of the 3rd of June, and we're pushing it out on Friday, the 5th of June, like every month, the first Friday of the month.
Nice.
You can find this audio, if you're watching it and you want to listen to it again, will be on all the podcast platforms. And also, if you actually want to see our smiley faces, instead of just listening to the voices, you can watch it on YouTube as well. But for now, thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Vivian. And thank you all for listening in. And ka kite anō.
Bye.